Okay, today we're going to look at multi-WAN setups with pfSense. So a lot of times people are going to use this for WAN load balancing. So you have a couple of connections that are about the same speed and you want to load balance connections between them. Now, the way that I have this set up for my personal needs is I have a high bandwidth line that is very unreliable on latency. And then we have a very reliable line that's just much slower. So for all of our video game traffic, it goes out of the lower latency reliable line, and then all of our downloads and streaming and things like that go out of our higher bandwidth. It's actually an LTE device. So first thing we need to look at is assignments for interfaces. So as you can see, we have our WAN, which is our LTE gateway, going out of port 0. Our LAN goes out of port 1, so that's going to go back to our switch. And then our DSL goes back to port 2, which goes back to the DSL modem. Let's look at routing. So we have our two gateways here. T-Mobile is our LTE provider, so they are T1 by default. They are set to the WAN interface. Then we have our DSL, which is tier 2, and it is the DSL interface. We are using Google IPs for monitoring, and you can add descriptions for gateways. It looks like I only have one description here. Our default gateway right now is set to our WAN gateway group, which we're going to dive in just a second. But you can set these to automatic or DSL gateway group, whatever you want to do. So let's look at gateway groups. So this is where you're actually going to do your load balancing or priority settings. Let's look at the WAN gateway group. So this has T-Mobile as tier 1 and DSL as tier 2. Now if you want to do WAN load balancing between two connections of a similar speed, or even two connections of different speed, and you just don't care about latency and gaming, things like that, like we do, you would set these to the same tier. So if I set this to tier 1 and the T-Mobile is tier 1, these are going to load balance connections across both these WAN connections. Now for our setup, we're going to do tier 2 because I don't want to use DSL unless T-Mobile's down. Just going to apply changes. And what we've done is create another gateway group called DSL gateway group. And this is the same thing in reverse. So the reason that we do that is because we're going to be using policy-based routing to go out of a DSL connection as a priority, which the WAN gateway group doesn't have. But if the DSL is down, that traffic would just cease to exist. So the problem with that, you're using your reliable connection for all your video games, for all whatever it is. Maybe you're sending out a specific department out of a specific gateway. But if that gateway's down, they're down. So with a secondary gateway group that's just in the reverse, you can prevent that. So on our gateway, we have WAN gateway group set up. So that just means that we're going out of T-Mobile by default. But if it's down, we can't ping the Google address is how that's going to work. Then we're going to swap over to the DSL. Okay, let's look at policy-based routing. So if we go to Firewall, Rules, then we're going to go to the LAN tab. This is where we're going to set up our rules for different traffic out of different gateways. Now this is outbound traffic. This is actually for streaming. It's going out of the WAN gateway group. Then we have our Xbox traffic, which says that all HTTP and HTTPS traffic needs to go out of the WAN gateway group. And again, that's the LTE connection. That's the higher bandwidth. That means that all of our media streaming, that means that our downloads, things like that, all of that's coming out of the higher bandwidth connection. But the one below it says that this device going to any port and any destination should go to the DSL. So that's going to be all of your higher number ports that a lot of video games use. They might pick random ports. Everybody kind of does it different. Sometimes you can find a set of ports that are used. Sometimes you can find destination IPs. I found that going through and trying to set up aliases for each individual game or service was just a headache. It really is. So the way that I found the best way to do this is just to send all of your traffic to HTTP, HTTPS that you're going to use. I mean, that's your download ports. That's just your normal web browsing ports. Your Netflix uses those ports. And then anything else, just send it out the lower latency, more reliable line. Our TVs, there's nothing that really needs low latency. So they all go out of the higher bandwidth, less reliability line. Okay, so let's look at these to see how to change the actual firewall rules. We're going to dive into this one for the Xbox. We're set to action pass, set to LAN, set to IPv4, it's TCP traffic. We're set to the single host and alias, which is the local IP of the Xbox inside of our network. Destination port range, we set to any, but it's from other to other. And that's going to be the name of the rule we set up that has those ports in it. We're going to go over how to set these rules here in just 1 second. I'm not logging this. Logging can fill up your pfSense pretty quick. I really suggest if you're going to do this for a business, absolutely set up a syslog server. Dump all your logs to your syslog server. If you're at home, turn on logging for just looking around, seeing what's going on, kind of debugging. But besides that, unless you just have a ton of space on your pfSense box, I don't like to log all rules, especially passes. So to set the actual gateway, we're going to go way down here to gateway. And you can see that we have our default T-Mobile, we have our 2 gateway groups at the bottom. So this one is going to go out the WAN, and we just select that and then click save. For your other traffic, you do the same thing, except for you can see that it has the same IP, but destination is just any. Then you go down to gateway, and it's set to DSL. And then make sure that you always click this green button to apply your changes. Now you can look at our traffic graphs. You can see that we do have traffic going out of WAN and out of DSL. And then we know that these rules are working. The best way to actually know that they're working is to go ahead and log those and then pull up your logs and look. Just to make sure that you're seeing traffic hitting the rule, seeing traffic going out the right port, things like that. So that's it for this one. I really hope that it was helpful. I hope it was informative and learned something. Let me know in the comments if I did terrible, which is fine. This is the first video, and we will try and do better. Let me know if there's something you want to know about pfSense, maybe something that I haven't thought to do, and we'll get a video made and go from there. All right, thanks guys.